First story by Anonymous. It was a crisp autumn evening when I decided to take a late-night walk through the dense Adirondack forest. The rustling leaves underfoot and the distant hoot of an owl were the only sounds accompanying my journey. Moonlight filtered through the thick canopy, casting eerie shadows on the forest floor. As I ventured deeper into the woods, a sense of unease began to creep over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I quickened my pace, hoping to put some distance between myself and this unsettling sensation. But the sensation persisted, growing stronger with every step. Suddenly, I heard a twig snap to my left. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. Through the trees, I caught a glimpse of movement. A figure, obscured by the darkness, was approaching me. Fear clenched my stomach as I realized I was not alone in this remote forest. My instincts screamed at me to hide, to find a place to wait until the stranger passed. But I couldn't move. Paralyzed by fear, I watched as the figure drew closer. Moonlight glinted off something metallic in his hand. Panic surged through me as I realized he was carrying a knife. I finally managed to break free from my fear-induced paralysis and dove behind a cluster of rocks. My breath came in short, shallow gasps as I peeked out to watch the stranger. He moved with an eerie grace, his footsteps soundless on the forest floor. As he passed my hiding spot, I caught a glimpse of his face. It was a face etched with lines of hardship and malevolence. His eyes gleamed with a sinister light as he continued on his path. It was then that I noticed he was muttering to himself, words that made no sense, a chilling mantra that sent shivers down my spine. I waited until he was out of sight, then cautiously emerged from my hiding spot. My initial plan of enjoying a peaceful stroll had been replaced by the desperate need to escape this sinister stranger. I retraced my steps, moving as quietly as possible. But the forest seemed to conspire against me. Twigs snapped underfoot, leaves rustled at my every movement, and the stranger's chanting grew louder in the distance. I could feel him closing in, his malevolent presence haunting my every step. Finally, I burst through the tree line and stumbled onto a dirt road. My heart leaped with relief as I spotted the headlights of a car in the distance. Without looking back, I sprinted towards it, praying the driver would stop and help me. As I reached the car, the driver rolled down the window, revealing a concerned face. I quickly explained the chilling encounter I had just experienced. Without hesitation, the driver offered me a ride to the nearest police station. We drove away from that dark, foreboding forest, leaving the sinister stranger behind. To this day, I can't forget the fear that gripped me that night or the strange, malevolent man who lurked in the shadows of the Adirondacks. Second story, John S. It was a cold and moonless night when my curiosity led me to the outskirts of a small, decaying industrial town in Pennsylvania. The factory, a relic of a bygone era, stood before me, its windows shattered and its facade crumbling. I had always been drawn to the eerie beauty of abandoned places, and tonight, I decided to explore this forsaken structure. As I entered the factory, the creaking of the rusty doors echoed through the cavernous space. The air inside was heavy with the scent of dampness and decay. My footsteps reverberated with a haunting echo as I ventured deeper into the heart of the abandoned building. I had my flashlight with me, casting an eerie beam of light into the darkness. Shadows danced and flickered across the peeling walls, creating an otherworldly atmosphere. I felt a shiver run down my spine, but my curiosity pushed me forward. As I turned a corner, I stumbled upon a chilling sight. In the center of the factory floor, there was a makeshift circle of candles, their flames flickering in the still air. Surrounding the candles were strange symbols drawn in chalk, symbols that I couldn't decipher. My heart pounded in my chest as I examined the scene. This was no ordinary abandoned place. It was a setting for something deeply unsettling. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but my morbid curiosity held me in place. That's when I heard it, a soft, rhythmic chanting coming from the shadows. I strained to listen, my breath catching in my throat. The chanting grew louder and more urgent, filling the factory with an eerie, otherworldly presence. I inched closer, my flashlight trembling in my hand. And then I saw them, figures in tattered, dirty clothes, their faces obscured by masks made of twisted metal and wood. They moved in a slow, hypnotic dance around the circle of candles, their bodies contorting and swaying to the rhythm of the chant. I watched in horror as they raised their arms, their chanting reaching a fevered pitch. The atmosphere in the factory became suffocating, as if the very air had thickened with malevolence. I realized that I had stumbled upon some kind of ritual, something beyond my comprehension. My heart raced as I realized I needed to leave, to escape this nightmare unfolding before my eyes. I retreated as quietly as I could, my flashlight off now, relying on the dim moonlight seeping through the shattered windows. As I reached the factory doors, I dared not look back. I burst out into the night, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I had seen something I was never meant to see, something that would haunt my dreams for years to come. Third story by Anonymous. On a cool summer evening, I found myself walking along the desolate shores of an isolated beach on the Oregon coast. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a silvery glow on the sand and the rhythmic waves that crashed against the shore. The tranquility of the beach always drew me, but this evening, that sense of peace would be shattered. As I strolled along the shore, my thoughts drifted far away from the world of the living. The soft whisper of the ocean waves should have been the only sound in my ears, but something out of place caught my attention, a faint, eerie melody carried by the wind. Curiosity piqued, I followed the haunting melody to its source. As I walked further down the beach, I spotted a solitary figure in the distance. The figure appeared to be dancing, moving with an unnatural fluidity. My heart quickened as I drew nearer, the music growing louder and more dissonant. The dancer was a man, his ragged clothes billowing in the wind. His movements were erratic, his limbs twisting and contorting in grotesque ways. It was a macabre dance, one that sent a shiver down my spine. I watched in morbid fascination as the man danced on the edge of the surf, his bare feet sinking into the wet sand with each step. The music, it seemed, emanated from a small, weathered accordion he held in his hands. The notes he played were discordant, a cacophony that seemed to defy any known melody. My unease grew as I realized I was the only witness to this bizarre performance. The man's eyes, hidden beneath a tangle of unruly hair, stared straight ahead, as if he were oblivious to my presence. It was as if he danced for an audience that existed only in his mind. I contemplated whether to approach him or to retreat from this eerie spectacle. Just as I was about to turn and leave, the dancer abruptly stopped. He turned his head in my direction, his eyes locking onto mine. In that moment, I felt a wave of dread wash over me. His eyes were empty, devoid of emotion or sanity. He began to move towards me, the accordion still clutched in his bony fingers. Panic seized me, and I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my chest. The man's movements grew more frenzied as he closed the distance between us. The haunting music intensified, assaulting my ears. I turned and ran, my feet sinking into the damp sand as I fled from the disturbing figure. I didn't look back until I had put a considerable distance between us. When I finally did, the beach was empty, the man and his eerie dance gone without a trace. My heart continued to race as I made my way back to the safety of civilization, haunted by the unsettling encounter on that desolate Oregon beach. As I continued my frantic sprint along the deserted beach, my breaths came in ragged gasps. The haunting melody still echoed in my ears, and the image of the dancing man with his vacant eyes was etched into my mind. I felt like I was running from a nightmare made real. I eventually reached the point where the beach met the rocky cliffs that overlooked the ocean. With no way to continue along the shore, I had no choice but to climb the jagged rocks, my trembling hands and tired legs making the ascent perilous. But the fear of encountering the mysterious dancer again fueled my determination. At last, I managed to scramble to the top of the cliffs, panting and disheveled. I cast one final glance down at the beach below, half expecting to see the strange man with the accordion following me. To my immense relief, there was no sign of him. The beach lay empty, bathed in the ghostly light of the moon. I knew I needed to put as much distance between myself and that forsaken beach as possible. The isolated location had offered no refuge, and the haunting encounter was etched deeply into my memory. I made my way back to my car parked on a nearby coastal road, my heart still pounding with residual fear. The drive back to civilization was a blur of winding roads and the distant roar of the ocean. But with each passing mile, the fear began to ebb away, replaced by a sense of bewilderment and disbelief. Who was that mysterious dancer on the deserted beach? What was the purpose of his eerie performance in the dead of night? Those questions haunted me long after that fateful evening, leaving me with a sense of unease whenever I thought back to that remote Oregon shore. To this day, I cannot shake the feeling that I had brushed against something unnatural and sinister, an encounter with the inexplicable that defied all rational explanation. The memory of that unsettling night continues to send shivers down my spine, a reminder that sometimes the line between reality and the eerie unknown can blur in the most unexpected places. Thank you for joining us for the whole video. That video on the screen is one of my favorite. Check it out. If you've enjoyed these horror stories, show your support by hitting the subscribe button. Did this tale send chills down your spine? Let me know in the comments.